Oh, that's strange.
Okay, Greg, please tell me again your story in Jakarta during the time when Soeharto was about to
Turun.
step down. Yes.
Well, the reason I left Brisbane was because I'd seen the prices of oil, flour, cooking oil that is, flour and what else, general household items had increased dramatically, very quickly, 3 times. So I thought this could possibly be big trouble for Soeharto, and I bought a ticket that afternoon and left for Jakarta. But coming into Jakarta, there were only 5 passengers, 4 people who lived in Jakarta, and me. And when I arrived, the immigration officer asked me very politely if I was sure that I was going the right way, because everybody was going that way to Singapore. So he said, look, I won't stamp your passport. Just go outside, have a look, and come back and tell me if you want to stay. So I went outside and saw army tanks and troops, and Jakarta was in trouble. I could see they'd burnt some toll gates close by. Toll gates at that time were owned by Soeharto's daughter, I think, all the tolls. So there was a reaction against Soeharto and rich Chinese, I think. So I came back and told the immigration officer, yes, I'll stay, and he sort of shrugged his shoulders and stamped my passport and said, on your way.
Okay, so from Brisbane, the plane was full.
To Bali. And
To
then,
Bali.
We were all told there was trouble in Jakarta, and it would be advisable if we didn't go because it was serious. But that was the reason I came in the first place, so I wasn't going to get off at Bali. But I was the only one who made that decision. Everybody else got off, except the 4 people who lived in Jakarta, who were Chinese, I think.
So how do you get the city center from the airport?
I was invited to, I had trouble, there were no taxis. And then, I think it may have been one of the Chinese passengers who I met again at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning or something. She'd arranged for a car to come to pick her up from her house, and she took me back. And from there I got into the city.
To the city center. Where did you stay at the time?
I had a friend in Kelapa Gading, that's why I know the Kelapa Gading story. But I went from that house to, had a walk around the city to see the buildings were still smouldering. And I walked into some areas and noticed that they had a black cross on the door, and I was told that it wasn't just random, it wasn't just free-for-all burning, it was an organised burning. Any building that in some way was related to Soeharto was burnt. Bank Central Asia, whatever. What else? I remember a big car showroom owned by Soeharto's brother, I think, and like 50 very expensive cars, Daimlers, Rolls Royce or whatever, or Mercedes-Benz. They weren't just burnt in the showroom, they were all very carefully taken out to the front along the footpath in a great line, like 30 top prestige cars, and then burnt. They didn't burn them just in the showroom. I thought, wow, it's so much trouble just to burn a car, to line them up all neatly out the front and then destroy them.
So you've seen the action of the people who burned the cars?
I didn't see them burning, I only saw the end.
The end, okay. The end.
But I did later interview a person who was not sure what you call him, he's army, ex-army, whatever, and he told me he'd been brought down from Bandung, I think, by train, and he was one of the groups that was going around burning supermarkets. 30 supermarkets were burnt, and he told me he was organised by certain gentlemen, and they were told to wear black armbands, and they parked outside the supermarket and in a truck, and they had tyres and fuel and things, and they smashed the windows of the supermarket and built up the tyres outside and made it a bonfire. and then told people to go in and take whatever they wanted, which they did, but very reluctantly to start with. They said, it's okay, you can take it, police aren't coming, the army aren't coming, everything was arranged, so people gradually, the trickle turned into a flood, and after an hour or two, some of these supermarkets were just hundreds of people flooding in, taking out television sets, anything they could carry, and going home or running off somewhere with these goods. Food was a problem because people were hungry at the time. Jakarta was in quite difficult times with food and money, inflation, and after about an hour or two, when these supermarkets were full, the guys with the black armbands then got the burning tyres outside and threw them in and set the buildings alight, and with people inside. And I know in one supermarket, 700 bodies, 700 people were killed.
You've seen it?
No, but I read that at the time. I was there at the time, and later on they said the total people killed were 2,000 or something like that, or 1,200 or something ridiculously low, considering one supermarket had 700 bodies. And some of these supermarkets were 5 stories high, full of people. Of course they had 700. But I went along to that supermarket a few days later because I heard sirens screaming, ambulance sirens, and I moved closer, and it was the supermarket that I'd found out where the 700 were burned. And the ambulances were lined up, I think 50 ambulances were taking 3 burnt corpses at a time, loading them into the ambulance and then switching on the siren and then screaming up the road, and that's what attracted my attention. So I was in a little taxi, about the size of a matchbox really, and we edged in closer and realised what was happening. They were taking the burnt bodies from the building and putting them in the... But the army was there and didn't like my being observing, an observer in this close situation. So the taxi got on both sides, and the front, a big army tank came, which is from inside a taxi. An army tank looks like a 5-story building, and it edged up very close to the front of the taxi. Then behind the taxi we had an armoured personnel carrier full of troops with tracks, and the tracks of the tank and the tracks of the armoured personnel carrier started to move, and the taxi had to move in between. They had no choice. And I remember the taxi driver was literally shaking with fear. And I wasn't too calm either. But we had to move. We were told, well, we weren't told to move. We were forced to move out, and that's how they shifted us out.
So if you think again about that special moment in Jakarta in May 1998, how do you see it? How do you summarize?
Well, it was amazing because I used to go along to the parliament as well. I was living in a boarding place, I think, at Setiabudi, and which is fairly close to where the parliament is. And I got to know some students who were preparing sandwiches and food to supply the students in the parliament because they needed food and drink and water. And I used to accompany them into the parliament building. We first of all started smuggling it in an ambulance, but then I forget who was in control. And the troops found out that we were bringing it in the ambulance, and they stopped us. But then after a while they said, well, 60,000 students were there, I think, so they let the food in. But then I heard one night, shortly before the resignation of Soeharto, there was an argument. The students were very well organised. They had somehow a listening device in the army headquarters, and they were listening to an argument between Wiranto and Prabowo. And Wiranto was trying to restrain Prabowo from sending troops to get rid of all the students from the parliament building. And when the students heard this, they came to me very quickly and said, you've got to go, it's dangerous. So they got me out straight away. And
you were where at the time?
I was in the parliament building.
In the parliament.
Yeah.
So it was like 20th of May.
Well, that wasn't the night that he resigned. It could have been the night before, I think. The night that he resigned was
21st.
the morning that he resigned, I think. Yeah, yeah, it could have been that. That's right, because could have been the night before. Yeah, because troops didn't come, but I think the Pink Berets, was it? They came, and they weren't the Marines. Is that right?
Right, yes.
They came, and this is what I heard later. They didn't hit the students. They ushered the students out. They helped them out. They didn't smash them. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas the alternative was to use brutality.
So in the morning when Soeharto announced his resignation,
Yes, wow.
where were you?
I think I was at Setiabudi. The whole, just a great cheer went up across Jakarta. It was just amazing. And people were dancing and cheering and clapping and whoa, incredible. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener for me. Yeah. So I was going to tell you one point about Chinese, because there were big buildings of Chinese being burnt, Bank Central Asia, or have been handed over already, but other big buildings. But one block back from the main street, I walked one block back and came across houses with barbed wire and barricades, and people were defending their home territory. And there were not rich but poor Chinese shop owners working together with local Indonesians, working together and defending their territory, because they weren't millionaires, billionaires. They were hard-working, everyday Chinese, and they had some special bond, I suppose, with the local people, and they were defending their territory. When I came up, they had helmets on and baseball bats, and said, "What are you doing here?" You know, and I said, "Well, I'm just having a look," you know. And they explained a few things, and yeah, they didn't let me in, but I was impressed with their defence mechanism. They were ready, a bit like later on Kelapa Gading. When I went to Kelapa Gading, there were great logs so high across the road to stop any vehicle from coming in. I used to go back there in a bus at 10 o'clock at night, and the bus stopped, then you walked around the log and walked into Kelapa Gading. But they had 12, 13, I forget how many now, tanks, army tanks were defending Kelapa Gading, and they cost money to do that for 2 weeks, I think. And that's why Kelapa Gading wasn't destroyable. It may have been otherwise, they think, perhaps, who knows. But a certain amount of money changed hands, and Kelapa Gading remained intact. It's very strange times. When I left Jakarta, I went to London, and Bali first off, I think, then London. And I remember it was a 12-hour wait at the airport, and I got tired of waiting. My name was called out at on the loudspeaker, and I wondered why, so I walked over and made a polite inquiry. And the reason they wanted to speak to me was that they wanted to give me a cheap ticket in the first class for a reduced rate. And he wanted, I think, 200,000, or I forget what the amount was, but I remember I talked to him for about 2 hours and discussed life and family, and he'd agreed to come right down to about $60, I think, rather than $200. And I agreed. So when I got on the plane, there were 2 Germans on the plane also. They'd also been approached. But
From Bali, yeah?
yeah, in Bali, and then they were walking up and down the corridor boasting. That, for $200 they got up here for first class. And I said, "Oh, you paid too much, sorry." So silly. Boasting, what a thing to do. Anyway.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you for your share. Thank you for sharing this story.
Thank you.